Today in this video, I'm about to share with you guys how one of the biggest bass behavior studies has changed how I've gone out and targeted bass. We're going to go over how to go find bass that are less pressured to help you go out there and catch more fish and put bigger fish in the boat. Let's get into it.
Yeah, that'll be a yeah.
That's a good one. Look at this dude. Look at this. Oh, get the... Got him. Giant. Yeah. Boom. Boom. Michael, get the net. The information that I am using has been documented by Ken Smith on his YouTube page. Ken interviewed Texas Park and Wildlife biologist Todd Driscoll, and he has two playlists that goes over a Toledo Bend and Lake Fork bass movement study. There are a few videos out there on YouTube that has reviewed this study. Johnny was first to the scene with Fish the Moment as he reviewed the information and made a video on it that, man, was a great one to watch. Then after that, a year later, in early 2023, Tyler from Bass Fishing HQ made a video as well that is most popular, I believe, on his YouTube channel. So one of the reasons why I wanted to use this data, use this information, and try to test it out on my local lakes is because these lakes get a lot of pressure. And there's a lot of great anglers here, guys. Where I live, there's some of these anglers that fish these lakes for longer than I've been alive. And so with that pressure, I wanted to use this information, go test it, and try to find fish that are less pressured. So the intriguing result from this study was the type of structure that the bass hung around. In the study, they had 6 classifications, and out of the 6, 41% of these bass related to flats. These flats were offshore flats, also called know-nothing banks, that was mentioned in the interview. And this means the remaining 5 structures together added up to 59%. These structures in the 59% were your obvious structures that anglers go after when they target bass. When I heard the fish in this study were only around points 10% of the time, that right there to me was an eye-opening. Points are easy to fish, easy target, and so right then and there, guys, I've not fished points on these lakes in the last month to 2 months. I've just abandoned points. Fishing offshore flats, know-nothing banks, and areas on the map where there may not be contour lines is nothing new in bass fishing. Johnny shared data from his video how during the 2010-2020 Bassmaster Elite Series, 38% of the top 3 finishes came from fishing flats. I even can go back to fishing trips from a decade ago, how we had some of the best offshore fishing trips, fishing areas like this with only having 2D sonar on the boat. So that's one thing I will share with you is how, like, when I heard that, and points is something that gets a lot of fishing pressure. I mean, even on this lake right here behind me, there are some great points with some great structure, and I mean, fish use them, but I know they get the pressure. So I was trying to use this little data towards my advantage to go find them less pressured fish. So in the past couple months, I would use my electronics, specifically 2D, down imaging, and south imaging, to go over the flats and look for cover. I would check the obvious flats on the lakes, some are community holes, and then I would also check the inobvious areas. Some of the creek arms on my lakes did not have many flat areas, so then I would look at the sloping, tapering like banks. My local lakes are highland reservoirs, and they do not really have the best contour maps unless if you had the Lowrance C-Map card. With that, I would check areas like this while on my electronic trips on other lakes that I do not fish often as well. On the lakes that I have done this, I have found similar results that I'm about to share. Really quick, I'd like to share with you guys a new podcast that I've started called Real Life in Fishing. There's a YouTube channel for it, and it is on all the major podcast platforms as well. Check it out after the video. Also, if you're interested, check out my Jimi Easterling Fishing Facebook page. I post content on it daily and also share information about my electronic lessons, guide trips, and other lesson opportunities as well. Let's get back to the video. So guys, when I go out and try to graph these non-obvious fishing areas, graph some of these flats, some of these random sloping banks that just have nothing to them, fish that I would find, there'd be 2 things to it still. There's either going to be a piece of structure that they're relating to, it could be a stump, it could be a laydown that's in 10 to 15 feet, or it could be a rock spot, or the fish were suspended. So with this, me seeing it on these lakes, that's really 2 types of fish that you're fishing for. I found there would be fish relating to structure, such as brush piles, logs, stumps, rock piles, standing timber, your typical cover. It would be easy to target the bass if there was less cover on these flats or even on the know-nothing sloping banks. Then the next factor would be the suspended fish. You can idle over the suspended fish and then fish for them, of course, with your traditional methods, as I did for years and other anglers did as well, or you can use your forward-facing sonar if you have it. This is where I've utilized my forward-facing sonar, and I will say if I did not have it, I would not be able to target these suspended fish as precisely, which is not new, as anglers have been doing this for more and more in the recent few years. There were times I found fish suspended around nothing on the flats, or they were suspended on the flats where there was deep water nearby. There are times where I've seen one fish, but typically they can be in groups from 3 to 5, sometimes even bigger. The fish that are relating to the structure may not be in such big of groups. Now, if you do find the special brush pile or rock spot, then of course, get ready to hang on. One note also to make is how fish will also not always be relating to the piece of cover, but they may be around it. There could be a rock patch and the fish can be 10 to 20 foot away. I've gone over in some recent videos how fish can relate around brush piles and not always in the brush. Now, of course, you can still catch these fish without forward-facing sonar. Before I had live scope, I would throw around the pile before I threw in it. Depending on the lure, one example is a crankbait, I would get bites throwing to the edge of the brush pile. I always thought the fish was in the piles and coming out to eat the crankbait, but now with live scope, I've learned that is not always the case. Now during this too, in the recent months, guys, when I go out here and try to find these unpressured fish, just so you guys know, I like to catch big fish. I'd rather catch 1 5 or 1 6 pounder in a day than catch 10 2-pounders. So with that, the lures that I used and actually the fish that I would try to target, just to keep that in mind as I'm going out here and trying to find these fish in groups of fish. Now guys, I like to catch fish. I know there are some people that rather catch 20 2-pounders, but I would really not, if I found a group of them fish and I caught a couple, I would leave trying to go find bigger fish because I rather catch bigger fish, just me personally. I had days on the water that was unbelievable. At times I may go a few hours without getting a bite, then all of a sudden load the boat up in 30 to 45 minutes. Then of course, as we know, it is called fishing for a reason. I would go days where I would leave the lake empty-handed. But even on the days I left the lake empty-handed, I felt like I learned more on those days than the days where I caught the fish. There are always a lot of factors to consider. Lake levels, weather, moon phase, the dam generation schedule, and even more. Some of the lures, I'm just going to go through these briefly, some of these lures that I use to target these fish. Now just also understand, like I said earlier, I'm trying to catch big fish. And I did have success with the big worm, did have success with crankbaits, but I'm not going to talk about those because you hear about those all the time. I'm first going to share my one that was my most successful, and that was this Dixie Jet Talon spoon right here. For some reason, in the past couple weeks when I was out here testing this and going through trying to find these different fish, this guy right here had my success of catching big fish, and I caught quite a few of them as well. One reason why I think this Talon spoon by Dixie Jet has been successful is because the bait in these lakes are about this size. There are some bigger gizzards, but man, this right here is mimicking some of the bigger gizzard shad. And if you guys know about throwing a spoon at all, you know you're going to catch big fish. And so that's one thing with me, is I know I can catch big fish. My rod that I was using is a Denali AttaX 710 Extra Heavy. Man, this is a great rod. It's my punching rod, okay? It's also my Alabama rig rod, all right? It's my rod that's coming. Like I said, I've caught a lot of big fish with it. I've caught a 10-pound fish with it. I've caught multiple other fish. There were times I have doubled up with this thing as well, as you see. One reason I like about it, it has 3 sets of treble hooks on it. There's 9 hooks right there, so you have a chance to catch more than one fish. The next lure that I used, of course, was a glide bait. Guys, I used a couple different brands of glide baits. The one I've been using lately is a Spro KGB right here, KGB Shad 180. And if you guys have not heard about it yet, I know they're hard to get. They're, like I said, you know, I'm going to put the link in the description, but probably not going to be for sale at the moment. This is just a little bit of a collaboration between KGB and Spro. Man, it's a more affordable glide bait. I mean, I really like this. I like the action. This one sinks a little more faster and gets deep to the deeper depths better than the original KGB, which was something that they wanted to actually do. They wanted this to be more sink faster, be able to fish in deeper depths. And like I said, this guy right here, now just for me lately, I've not caught a lot of fish with it. It's been hard to get bites with it, but man, you can find the fish in the areas. So what I'll do, if I do see some fish in the area, like let's say, you know, you might think it's a rock and you throw it, and all of a sudden here comes some big 5 to 7 pounders and they don't eat it, then I go right behind this, okay, and I throw the hover rig. I just have a Strike King catfish shad on this hover rig. It's caught some fish. Now my better fish though have been with the hover rig paired with a Zoom Magnum finesse worm. Not the Magnum trick worm, the Magnum finesse worm, okay? That's been my one that I've actually had some better bites with, but even not just with that, targeting the fish that are suspended. I will throw that at individual fish on rock, or if I see a piece of wood. It's been mainly rocks. There's been more rock in these lakes that I'm fishing than the wood. But guys, at hover rig, man, it's been a way that I know that I've gone and be able to get a couple extra bites just because of the action in the water, the gliding action, and I'm not gonna lie, it's fun to catch them on a spinning reel as well. The next lure that I love to target these fish, man, and these can be for suspended fish, it can be for fish on the bottom. I'm not gonna talk about it long, guys, but it's a hair jig. This is just a Cumberland Pro prayer hair jig. Johnny Schultz has a video on Fish the Moment, man, where he breaks this down really well. If you watch Fish the Moment a lot, Johnny catches a lot of fish with this. He's been catching fish with this for like 2 to 3 years. Okay, so it's if you've not done it, you need to give it a shot. It will catch big fish, okay? I've seen it live. I've been in the boat with Johnny, and he finally sold me on it, and it's something I have on right now in the summer. Okay, guys, so 2 other lures I'm going to talk about. And it's not just the lure, it's mainly just the category, but we have a swim bait right here. This is the Tush Ultimate Swim Bait Hook paired up with a Hog Farmer Spunk Shad. Then I have the Scounger Head paired up with a Hog Farmer Spunk Shad. There was one day that they wanted this, and I lost them. I'll tell you that right now. I lost some bigs with this, and I was using the wrong rod, okay? So as I learned from talking to Johnny and other anglers about it, when you're throwing this bigger Scounger head, throw it on a bigger crankbait rod. I was throwing it on my spinnerbait rod, and I got my butt whooped, okay? And then I really, that day, was really down on myself, but I learned, hey, when you're throwing these deeper, you want this thing on a bigger crankbait style rod. So a rod example you want to throw it on, which I have my glide bait on it right now. That's why I kind of take this back and forth off of it. I have a Denali AttaX heavy 710 rod that I throw my 10XDs on, throw that glide bait on, and right here I throw this on it too. And then this is just the Tush with the Hog Farmer Spunk Shad. Johnny actually made a video on this on Fish the Moment that, you know, right after Jacob Wheeler's win, he went out there and mimicked it, and man, got it done. For me, I've not had just the success at it with these lakes, but believe me, when it starts happening for real, I will let you guys know about it. Okay, now one question I know you're probably gonna ask is, hey, all this information, the data that I watched from that video you've talked about and how you're fishing, can I apply it to my lakes? Guys, that's a big question. And even I'm gonna share and get into that real quick, okay? I'm gonna just briefly get into it. Johnny from Fish the Moment and I have been talking probably after every fishing trip. Johnny's been on the water a lot lately, and as you guys have heard, I've been on the water a lot lately, and we kind of feed back and forth. And I've shared with him how I've been catching these fish, finding these random fish relating to a single piece of cover or out there suspended, and going back to the flats deal. Johnny even mentioned and brought up to me that how Beaver Lake sets up, where he's at right now, and there's other lakes in the country that study that was done at Toledo Bend might not apply to those types of lakes. So guys, keep that in mind. This might not as much apply to your lake. One thing to note, these lakes that I'm fishing right now has a lot of bass in it, a great population of fish. So if your lake doesn't have the population that these lakes have, and even them Texas lakes, how I'm fishing here, guys, you can do down in Texas, Lake Fork, all them smaller lowland reservoir lakes. It kind of sets up for that. So where you're at, you got to ask yourself, can I use this in any way to help find fish that are less pressured? That's just the question that you need to ask yourself.